Hey everyone, it's Lexie. So in today's video, I'll be sharing with you all the books that I ended up reading in June and those that I plan to read in July. So I think June overall was probably my most successful reading month. I feel like for the most of the year, or for the majority of the year, a lot of my books have been, 3 stars, 2 stars, so we've kind of been in middle of the road territory for a really long time, and I feel like I finally have found a good rhythm of books that have really stood out this year, and these ones will definitely be making my favorite books of the year. Definitely a lot of these were new releases that I kind of just all read back to back, which I really enjoyed. I also had one DNF as well, so despite all the great stuff that I read, I had one DNF, which I will talk about as well. But overall, I'm really excited to talk about the books not only that I read, but those I plan to read in July. July will be a bit of a crazy month for me, just with traveling. I'm going to be presenting at an international conference in Stockholm this month, so we'll see how much reading I do get to, because I tend to not read a lot while traveling, so we'll see. We're hoping for the best right now, but without further ado, let's get started. So first up, I have The Night in the Moth by Rachel Gillig. This book is probably one of my most anticipated releases of the year, so I was really excited to get my hands on it, and I also have like the sprayed book edition as well. But I really love the cover of this as well. But I really loved her Shepherd King, I think duology is the name, but of One Dark Window and Two Twisted Crowns. I really loved her storytelling and her characters and her world building, so I was really excited to dive into this one. This one follows Sybil, who is a diviner who lives at this kind of church where she and 5 other women are part of this diviners that is ruled by this one person that kind of oversees the church, and she has this skill where she basically drowns, and through there she sees kind of she can kind of tell if someone has good luck coming or good fortune coming, and she ends up crossing paths with this knight and goes from there. I think it's best not to know too much about this one. I think it's just kind of best to kind of dive into it, but this one I gave a 5 out of 5 stars. I was thoroughly enjoyed the entire time. It was really entertaining, and I really loved the adventure and the kind of intensity of a lot of the scenes. I felt there were some parts that really had me on the edge of my toes, and I really loved the world building in here. It was such a unique world and concept, similar to One Dark Window and that duology. This one just had a really unique concept. I loved the magic system. I really loved the air of mystery that also is presented in here as well. There's also a gargoyle character that kind of gave me Olaf vibes as well, which I really enjoyed. So even though there's kind of this darker subject matter and a sense of adventure in terms of fantastical world that you kind of see in fantasy, kind of having that character really kind of added a little bit of humor to this, which I really enjoyed. And it is a romantasy. I did like it. I didn't feel like it was too crazy or anything like that. I felt like it was still pretty toned down compared to a lot of romantasy books. I think it wasn't until there were 100 pages left that finally happened. So it was pretty, I wouldn't say not on the spicy meter from bell pepper to a ghost pepper. I'd say it's like jalapeno. It wasn't too bad. My husband read this and he liked the kind of fantasy aspect, but he wasn't a fan of the romantasy in this one. He said it was just a little bit too much for him because he really liked the One Dark Window duology. So I think it just depends on personal taste, but this one ended on such a big cliffhanger that I'm really excited to see what happens next, and I just love the characters. And like I said, I gave this a 5 out of 5 stars. It was probably definitely one of my favorite reads of the year. So next, keeping the momentum going with a new release that also was really good, was the Martha's Vineyard's Beach and Book Club by Martha Hall Kelly. This is a dual storyline World War II historical fiction where in present day we follow this woman who has finally kind of stepped off the boat to Martha's Vineyard. She's trying to figure out more about her mother's past. She finds that after her mom passed away, there was this artist that was written in some of her stuff that she was going to go see, and so the daughter decides to go and figure out what is this artist's connection to her mom. And so while the artist is telling the history of the farm that she is currently living on, we are kind of getting told the kind of story of the women we're following them. We follow 2 young sisters who live on a farm in Martha's Vineyard, and they basically there are kind of talks and rumors around the town about German submarines that are going close to land, and there's thoughts to be a German spy in their mix. So while this is all going on, we're getting like jumping around in different time points in terms of the present day and past. I really love the past narrative. I loved the bond between the sisters. I felt like there was a lot of very strong female relationships in this, and it was really interesting seeing kind of the war fought at home story, which I felt like it was very different than kind of being in the midst of Europe. I felt like the kind of US like perspective was really interesting, and what these women had to go through and everything they had to sacrifice, and just the mystery of figuring out who is this German spy was really fun. I did feel like the present day storyline was very insignificant compared to this. Like I felt like it was very, very minor compared to some of the stuff that like was told in the story. If the main focus, I would say like 95% of the chapters were focused on that past storyline in the 1940s. So I felt like the present day kind of really took away from some of the kind of the storyline, but there's so little interaction with that narrative that I felt like it wasn't really necessary. But this one I gave a 4 out of 5 stars. It was definitely had me hooked. I really loved the characters. I loved the dynamics between the characters, and definitely kind of figuring out what was going on with them I really enjoyed. So definitely a very different kind of World War II historical fiction, but one I definitely recommend. It's not my favorite of this author's, but nevertheless I still enjoyed it. So this was also another 5-star read for me that is definitely going to be one of my favorites of the year, and it is Atmosphere by Taylor Jenkins Reid. This book, I haven't cried reading a book in a really long time, and this one, like, I literally had tears running down my face, and our dog Willow was like, could tell that I was like upset, and that was making her upset, so it started this whole thing. But this book was beautiful. We follow Joan, I think is her name. Yeah, Joan, who is aspiring to be an astronaut. So the book starts out where she is doing mission control basically at NASA, and the students that she came into, astronaut school, or to train to be an astronaut, are on a space mission where something goes terribly wrong. So we get the kind of opening chapters of finally everything hitting the fan, and then we get flashbacks basically leading up to that point. But this is also a love story, a sapphic love story. It was beautiful. I really love the characters, and especially having the dual storyline where some of these characters' fates, like something really bad is happening, and kind of seeing these relationships form and evolve over the course of 5 or so years. It definitely was really heartbreaking to see, but that style of writing was just so unique, and there was just something really transformative about this book that really, it was fast-paced. At like the last 20 pages, like I said, I literally was sobbing, and it was beautifully written. I've recommended this book to everyone. I was like, you need to read this. It was so beautiful. I really love the, really highlighting gay romances. I think it was beautifully written, well done. It was heartbreaking. You can't help but root for these two, well accomplished and successful women. I really loved the struggles. I didn't feel like anything was like that third act, like miscommunication. Like I felt like everything was very adult, I would say, like very mature in terms of the relationship struggles that they're going through. This one I think is my favorite Taylor Jenkins Reid, dare I say, and I'm really happy about this because I didn't really care much for Carrie Soto is back, so it was really, I was very pleased to see that we got like this amazing book. Definitely, I think when I look back on my life, this will be a book that is, definitely one of my favorites. So like I said, obviously I gave this a 5 out of 5 stars. So I ended up having to go back home to Toronto because we had to renew our passport. So during the drive there, I listened to the audiobook for Kamala Harris's memoir, Is the Truth to Behold, and this one was really good. I find her so inspirational, and it just is like, what could have been, especially, how it is right now in America. But, she's so accomplished, in hearing about some of her, how she ended up in her career and some of the major milestones in her life, and how that's really shaped her career in helping, people, and eventually being a defense attorney, and kind of how that eventually led into politics. So I find her just so inspirational, and this was a great book to read. It just makes me just sad of oh, what could have been right now, but she's definitely will always be a really great role model. So I was happy to finally pick up her book. And like I said, for nonfiction, especially if they're read by the author, I do prefer to listen to that through audiobooks. So I had the perfect opportunity with all the driving I had to do. So finally happy that I picked this one up. And like I said, she's so inspirational. So it was really fun to learn more about her and her story. And before I get into my July reads, I do want to talk about my DNF, which was Bury Our Bones in the Midnight Soil by V.E. Schwab. This one I am so shocked that I didn't really end up enjoying. I think the only thing you really need to know is that it spans over centuries and it follows lesbian vampires. My husband ended up reading this and he said it was fine. And he said it wasn't like great or anything, but it was just okay. And that's how I felt with it. I got maybe 150 pages into it and I couldn't do it anymore. I didn't find any of the characters very, enjoyable to read from. I felt it was just, for how many pages I read, really not a lot happened. It was too much of a slow burn to really care, and then the characters weren't great enough for me to actually care what was going on. So this one I was really disappointed by, so I DNF'd it kind of at maybe 20% through, which was very disappointing because I really loved Addie LaRue, and the concept of this book just sounded so interesting. So I'm really sad I DNF'd it. If you look at a lot of the Goodreads ones, there's either people who really love it just because it's V. Schwab or like the topic, and then there's some that are a little bit more critical. So I recommend you check those ones out because, like I said, I can't critique the whole book because I didn't read the whole thing. So this book was disappointing. I do have the audiobook on hold from the library, so I think that would be my way of maybe finishing the story. My husband kind of gave me the bullet point version of like what happens, and I do find that interesting, but just the way this was written, it just was not enjoyable. So I do find like the premise very interesting, but just the execution wasn't great. So this ended up being a DNF for me. So next, let's move on to my July books. And had I not wasted my time with Bury Our Bones in the Midnight Soil, I would have finished this one in time. But it is Horse by Geraldine Brooks. This book is fantastic. I have about like 100 pages or so left in this one, but basically the premise of this book is that it follows it's a bunch of different storylines basically, but it all centers around this thoroughbred horse that was very much a star in the late 1800s. And so in present day, we follow two people that have discovered a painting of this horse and that somehow get connected because the bones of this horse are in the Smithsonian. So they are kind of studying this horse, learning more about it, but we're also getting flashbacks to this horse and his trainer, who was a slave in the kind of 1850s into 1860s. And so we are kind of bouncing around a bunch of these storylines in terms of how this horse ended up at the Smithsonian, how this horse was painted, and all these things. And I think it's really best to kind of go into it not really just knowing that, and it's been really great so far. I really love this. There's just so much going on, and it's just beautifully written. I love all the things about this. I love all the storylines, so I can't wait to share more of you once I finish this in my July wrap-up. Next, I have Northwoods by Daniel Mason, and this one just seems so interesting. I love books that are of a place or something that is connected through times and different life experiences, or like that's connected through the centuries or the decades or different generations. I'm a sucker for that. But it says, when two young lovers abscond from the Puritan colony, little do they know that their humble cabin in the woods will become the home of an extraordinary succession of human and non-human characters alike. An English soldier destined for glory abandons the battlefields of the New World to devote himself to growing apples. A pair of spinster twins navigate war and famine, envy and desire. A reporter unearths an ancient mass grave, only to discover that the earth refuses to give up its secrets. A lovelorn painter, a sinister conman, a stalking panther, a lusty beetle. As the inhabitants confront the wonder and mystery around them, begin to realize that the dark Beautiful Past is very much alive. So this one just seems super interesting, and so we'll see. This is definitely, like, I feel like more of a summer read, so I've been trying to prioritize reading this sometime this month, so we'll see. Like I said, it'll be a little busy, but this is definitely one I'm really excited about. Next, this was on one of the books that was on my summer TBR, and it just seemed so intriguing, and it is The Berry Pickers by Amanda Peters, and this one just seems like it's going to be heart-wrenching, but I really like how it focuses on Indigenous family separation. I think is one of the major themes in this one, so it just seems like it will be really hard-hitting, which I think is very important too, that we don't shy away from these topics. But it says, July 1962, following in the tradition of Indigenous workers from Nova Scotia, a family arrives in Maine to pick blueberries for the summer. Weeks later, 4-year-old Ruthie, the family's youngest child, vanishes. She is last seen by her 6-year-old brother Joe sitting on a favorite rock at the edge of a berry field. Joe will remain distraught by his sister's disappearance for years to come. In Maine, a young girl named Norma grows up as the only child of an affluent family. Her father is emotionally distant, her mother frustratingly overprotective. Norma is often troubled by recurring dreams and visions that seem more like memories than imagination. As she grows older, Norma slowly comes to realize that there is something her parents aren't telling her. Unwilling to abandon her intuition, she spends decades trying to uncover this family secret. So, like I said, this one just seems really interesting, and I think really having books and media talk about the treatment of Indigenous families, I think it's always very important, and I feel like this one is going to be especially hard-hitting, so I'm really excited to dive into this one. And I feel like this, again, I don't know why I've been waiting for summer to read this, so hence why I've been waiting to read it now, so I'm definitely very much looking forward to this one. Next, I have Under the Same Stars by Libba Bray. I'm really excited to dive into this one, and Libba Bray I've loved for a very long time. I've read her Gemma Doyle trilogy when I was in high school. I love like the Diviners Quartet, so I'm very excited to dive into this one, which is kind of more of a historical fiction, but it says, New York 2020. As the world stills around them, best friends Miles and Chloe keep each other afloat with late-night phone calls and true crime podcasts. When an unexpected package from Chloe's grandmother arrives, it plunges them into their own cold case investigation. 2 identified teenagers who went missing in a German forest 80 years ago. West Berlin, 1980. In a divided Germany under the strict eyes of her parents, lonely American transplant Jenny is suffocating until she meets free-spirited Lena, a beautiful punk rock girl hell-bent on tearing down the Berlin Wall, and the mysterious Frau Hermann, a kind old lady whose fascinating stories may hide secrets of her own. Kleinwald, Germany, 1939. It is said that if you write a letter to the bridegroom's oak, the love of your life will answer back. The summer that best friends Sophie and Hannah receive their first replies from the famous tree, the world suddenly feels like a pliable, magical thing, as if it would be shaped by their dreams. But soon World War II creeps into their small town. Dreams turn brittle, neighbors turn on one another, lies bloom like poppies between the girls, and the forest is no longer a refuge, but a dark world filled with unimaginable danger. So I think this one is interesting. I love books, again, that are connected through time. So I'm excited to read more from this author. It's been a while, so I'm definitely excited to dive right in. And lastly, because when I travel, I try not to, it's always just easier to have a kind of ebook with me. And so I plan on getting On the Way to the Wedding by Julia Quinn from the library, which is the final book in like the Bridgerton series, I felt. So I'm very excited. It's been almost a year since I have been kind of fully reading this series, and this one is finally the last, so I am happy to kind of dive into this last book. I know there are other spin-off, but this is like the main Bridgerton series. It follows Gregory's story, so I'm very interested to dive into this one. And like I said, it's just easier to travel with an ebook, and this one, the Bridgerton books are always usually available at the library, so this will be my worldly travels book. So that's it, guys. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know in the comments below what books you've read in June and which ones you look forward to read this summer. But yeah, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you guys next time. Bye, guys.